we making them feel? Not creating a client therapist relationship during these talks. The web series and any services associated with the series, including but not exclusive to open office hours, social media posts, and any other form of communication, are for educational purposes only. And as a reminder, if you feel at any point in time that you're in need of immediate support or you are currently in crisis, you can text 741-741 for the crisis text line, or call the Crisis Connections at 866 for crisis at any time. There are also a lot of other resources. So if you feel like these are not a good fit for you, please reach out to us and we'll help you find a good resource. And know that this is a safe space for everyone. We are here to support each other and we can be real here, but also we need to make sure that we are respectful and kind to each other. For those of you who haven't joined us before, Balance in Mind is a grassroots group founded by parents from the Lake Washington School District, empowered by the Lake Washington Schools Foundation. If you want to see the other great programs they're doing, you can go to lwsf.org. Balance in Mind works with a lot of community partners to raise awareness about emotional and mental health challenges facing our youth. And we're all about empowering parents and building communities so our kids can grow up healthy, resilient, and equipped for life. As a reminder, we have one more parent chat for this year. I can't believe we're almost done with 2020. Many people are saying thank goodness for that. On December 16th, we'll be talking about creating space for joy in difficult times. I'll actually be hosting and presenting for that one. It's one of my absolutely favorite topics. Right now, sometimes it can seem difficult to find joy, but promise it's there somewhere. And coming up in 2021, we have an amazing lineup for the first few months already. We're going to be talking about screen time issues, body image, healthy relationships, talking about consent, and we are just getting started. So if you have some topics that you feel like we should be covering, please let us know and we'll see if we can add that to the lineup. My name is Sherry Gazit. I'm going to be your host and facilitator tonight. I'm the founder of TeenWise and MomWise. I'm a teen life coach, a parent educator, and I'm a proud member of the Balance in Mind team. We also have tonight with us Michelle Brode. She is a behavioral support health specialist at the Youth Eastside Services, who is one of our community partners. She works with individuals and groups. Does a lot of classroom presentations when she can. Some of the topics are on suicide prevention, vaping. She also supports staff and parents on how to best support the well-being of their students. And she's very passionate about mental health literacy and parenting, as you will see tonight. Welcome, Michelle.
Thanks so much. Glad to be here.
So let's dive in and talk about the fostering calm communication. Like, this is a big deal right now because we're all kind of stuck at home, right? And we are with each other a lot and stress is high. So sometimes it can be really difficult to keep our calm. For those of you who are with us tonight, I'd love for you to put in the chat box, like give us a thumbs up or a yes or something. If you have lost your calm in the last few months, you're not alone. So Michelle, tell us, like, why is this an important topic? Why do we choose this tonight?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is never a moment in parenting where this isn't a relevant topic, but then you think about all of the stresses that parents, that youth and families as a whole are feeling these days. And it just feels more pertinent than ever to figure out, like, how do we all be together and maintain a peaceable and calm approach with each other.
Right. And, you know, this is really a challenge for all of us because our fuses are a little shorter these days. Hopefully we can get it to a new normal pretty soon, but we're still feeling this like lack of control and the craziness that's all around us.
Yeah, and I can see from the chat that you know, there are a lot of people experiencing this, and I think that's very, very common these days. These are challenging times, and we're all feeling a little closer to the end of our rope, and we're not getting the same like ways of getting our cups filled in other places, and the stressors just build up, and it impacts the communication we have inside our own heads with our partners, with our friends, and certainly with our kids.
Right. So I think we've established it's normal to lose our calm once in a while. Everybody here listening, I'm sure it's happened at some point, and we just have to like regroup and figure out how to move forward from that. So I think, Michelle, you wanted to start off with a question that'll kind of it'll set the groundwork for what we're striving for tonight. So we're going to start with a breakout room. One of the things to remember, for some people, breakout rooms seem a little bit scary and different, and we're all here to support each other. So even if you don't want to talk, you can still get a lot out of the break rooms. So just hang in there. And what's our question, Michelle?
Yeah, so I'm going to just share a little story before I present our question, which is that I've been thinking a lot about the adults who really connect with kids in meaningful ways. And those can be in a parent-child relationship, they can be in a mentoring relationship or a coach or a teacher. So there's so many ways in which adults interact with kids. And I was thinking recently about a high school teacher of mine, and um, he was really unique in that he treated us like our opinions were equally as valid as his, and just like approached us almost as colleagues, not in an inappropriate way, but just like really heard what we had to say and considered it fully. And I know, I mean, we were high school students, like I know we frustrated him at times, and he would tell us that, but like in a really very honest and real way. And it just felt really different than other teachers. So I've been thinking about him, and I've been thinking about, other people who like really just have a knack for this calm communication with young people. And so the question that I was considering is like, if we think about when we were younger, whether we were a child or a teenager, or even like a young adult, to think about someone who like really supported you or understood you and how they communicated with you, and to think about like what words would you use to describe their communication style or their approach. So I'm going to put that in the chat right now. And I think we're going to head into breakout rooms in just a moment. And people who are willing to share an experience they had or a relationship where they can relate to an adult interacting with them as a youth in a way that just felt really supportive and caring. I'd love to hear more about what words might describe that experience.
One thing to remember also when you're in the breakout rooms, you can still use the chat box. Like the people in your room will see your chat. So I know last time we had some people who there was too much noise going on with the kids in the background. And also some of you don't want to be talking about your kids if they're nearby. So that the chat box will give you a way to still share if that's an issue for you. All right, so Bonnie, I think we're ready to go into our first breakout room. And this is going to be about 5 minutes. Bonnie, do you have a way to see if everybody's back? Like, does it say like where people are?
This is everybody now.
Okay, great. Okay, so Michelle, we're going to kind of just bring up some points from the breakout rooms. Val and I were in the same room, so we have insight from that room. But Bonnie and Michelle, I think you were also in separate rooms.
Yeah, we were. Some of the things I heard in the breakout room where I was the experience of like not necessarily feeling heard and not having safe adults to talk to. And so just feeling like feelings weren't really expressed and experiences weren't really acknowledged. We heard about parents who were, created a nice balance, like kind of everything in moderation, and made time for fun and snuggles and connecting. And also just trying to like shift a little nuance wise, like to not be quite as I don't know if I'm exactly capturing the essence of it, but like be as rigid or as strict as the parenting that they had experienced.
Mm-hmm. In our session, I was brought up about being treated as if your opinion mattered, that you're kind of an equal, you're an individual, you're not just grouped with everybody else. And Ravi brought up growing up with family around is such a positive experience because you get a lot of that positive communication, calm communication from people who aren't in your home every day, and they have a different perspective too, which is why therapists and counselors and coaches are great for the same reason, right? They're just an outside person, not in that everyday shuffle.
And it also speaks to how difficult the current moment is, right? Because we're spending the vast majority of our time with the same small handful of people. And so if we know that having those outside people makes a big difference, you can clearly see how this moment is challenging in that way.
Right. Yeah, we're not getting the breaks that normally we would get, with our kids going to school and us going to work, or, even going to the movies. There's a lot more going inside the walls of our homes. And as you said, being with the same group of people, same faces, it really can be challenging. Several of my clients have said, look, I love my parents, but I don't want to see their face anymore today. And they're in the rooms all the time. They just need that space.
I can't remember if I mentioned this in an earlier parent chat, but Lisa D'Amore is an author that I love. And she was talking about how her teenager several weeks ago just said, I'm taking a sabbatical this weekend. Like, just taking a break from you guys.
Yeah. There was a friend of mine was allowing her kid to have breaks by letting her go out to the car, like just hang out in the car, and then brought her dinner out there. I mean, people are getting creative on how to create some space between themselves and their teens and their kids, because you really do need some of that space to help keep your calm, really is the bottom line. This is totally relevant to tonight because if we are feeling calm to begin with and going into a difficult situation with our kids, the outcome is just going to be so much better.
Yeah. Was there another breakout room that we haven't heard from?
Bonnie, how about you? What room were you in?
I was taking care of some other things and didn't make it.
That's right. That's right. You were managing it all. Did anybody else want to bring up what their room said? And you can also put it in the chat if you want to. We've always got that. Okay, let's see. So let's talk a little bit about what gets in the way of calm, positive communication.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'd imagine it's quite a long list. And if people want to be putting some things in the chat, you are most welcome to. Everybody's invited. I mean, I think one thing that we've been referring to all along is just that feeling of being overextended. And when our fuse is a little shorter, that certainly gets in the way of calm communication, right? So like Allison is saying, not enough me time. But I think if we consider two really big buckets of what gets in the way of calm communication is when parents either feel like their values are being violated or experience safety concerns with their kids. And in both of those situations, I think buttons that are getting pressed and some of the core tasks that we connect with as parents in terms of communicating our values and passing our values on to our children and keeping them safe. When those two things get stepped on, I think that's a time when good communication really falls apart.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And I feel like also there, and I think it was Val brought up being distracted, not able to focus on the conversation. We've got so many things going on in our home right now that it's like this extra noise, right? When our kids are asking us something or trying to have a conversation with us, and it's like a fly that just, is buzzing around. It's that feeling. So that goes back to like this idea of if you can't really focus on the conversation and the communication at that point, just be upfront with your kids and say, I really can't focus right now. Let's regroup in 10 minutes, 30 minutes. So you're not trying to act like you're engaged in this conversation and then it ends up just going sour.
Absolutely. And that's one of those points of balance that, like, if we don't enjoy our kids talking to us when they're only 20% paying attention to us, then we can imagine that they probably don't appreciate it when we're only 20% paying attention to them.
Mm-hmm. It's really interesting. In my coaching practice, I work with teens and their parents. So I hear a lot from both sides. And what is fascinating is that both sides say the same thing. Like, they don't really listen to me. They don't understand me. They don't respect me. They're not doing what I asked them to do. And so sometimes if we can just flip that and think about what is getting us out of our calm zone, that's probably what's getting your teen out of their calm zone as well, or your little one.
Yeah. And I think in some ways as parents, like, we do need to be the adults in the situation and to model those skills for our teens, right? So I genuinely do most of the time expect parents or want parents to be able to be present to their kids. I don't expect that kids are always going to be able to be present to their parents' experiences, right? And so there are some times where, like, their mutuality in these relationships is important, but it's not always 50-50. And so there are times where parents really do need to be able to listen even when they disagree, and that is excruciating. Asking for more detail, like, tell me what happened, or how did that make you feel, like when we feel like delivering a lecture and
Right.
saying, oh my gosh, child, please just do X, Y, and Z and it'll all be taken care of. But, like, to help them think through what are the pieces of that go into learning and growing and becoming a competent human being out in the world. It's just different, and so sometimes it's not kind of an even match in terms of what parents are offering and what our kids are offering in those conversations.
Right. And we can't just say, well, my kid did this, so I reacted like this. They deserved it because they were being rude or they weren't listening to me. It happens sometimes, but yet we need to get beyond that. We can't just blame it on our kids' behavior.
Right. And it definitely does happen. Like, I just want to be real and say, like, it happens, and it happens to all of us. And there are times where we just lose our cool, but it's important that we, I feel like the most important thing, it kind of goes back to that Maya Angelou quotation we shared at the beginning about, like, it matters, what matters most is how other people make us feel, or how we make other people feel. And so I just feel like the relationship is the most important thing. And if we've done something that causes a tear in that relationship, then it's our opportunity to go model to our kids how we make that repair, and to go to them and just say, I was so stressed out in that moment, and that is not an excuse, but that's my understanding of how I responded in such a thoughtless way. And I can tell that I hurt your feelings, and I'm genuinely sorry. And I'm going to try to be more aware of that in the future, and to just really own up to, like, making that mistake.
And what you're saying now that is super important is that you're not just saying, well, I'm stressed out, so I'm yelling. Because then you're saying, if you're stressed out to your kids, it's okay to yell. So we don't want that. So the whole thing of going back and saying, I didn't handle that right, I'm going to try better next time, that's very different than just saying, I scream because I'm stressed.
Right. Yes. Because they also have a lot of stress that can make them scream.
So if you are the one who says, well, I'm stressed out, you know what you're going to be getting back from your kids? They're going to scream and yell and be like, I was stressed. You shouldn't get mad at me because that's how you handle it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So let's see here. Bonnie said, I notice when my emotions are triggered, I can pay attention to what I'm saying, but not always how I'm saying it. I don't yell, but it turns out that my tension is getting communicated anyway. What a good point, Bonnie. Like, we really have to be mindful and aware of the tone of our voice. Our kids usually will say something back, right? If you say something snarky, they'll be like, well, why are you being so rude? Or what's wrong with you? They tune into that. And so we do have to be mindful of how we're saying things. It's not always just the words.
Absolutely. I mean, we can think of so many times that our kids have said probably the appropriate words in the completely inappropriate tone, and it just doesn't come across well, or it doesn't feel good. And certainly, I'm sure we have all been in the position of doing that as well. I want to talk about a couple of things, if I can, Sherry, that I think kind of get in the way, or what those stumbling blocks look like when communication is breaking down a bit. I think as parents, like, we all know when we're yelling. Okay, probably not in the good communication zone. But I think there are lots of things that we do as parents that we feel are just kind of natural parts of parenting, that when I watch interactions among families, I really see the kids just go blank and check out. It becomes that wah, 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 wah thing from Charlie Brown. So I think about, like, parents who are always explaining everything to their kids, or explicitly teaching every moment. Um, and I think we all catch when we're like in lecturing mode or nagging. But I think, there's this notion, right? We think about adolescents in particular, that youth are very sensitive to social status. And I think I've mentioned this in parent chat before, that actually does play out at home as well. And so because they're trying to establish themselves as individuals out in the world, they're very attentive to status. And that is true at home. And so when they are constantly in a position of being reminded, you don't know as much as I do, you are not as capable as I am, you are not as familiar with the world as we are, that is just like, it is excruciatingly painful to just be constantly reminded of your inexperience or incompetence. And I think if we are thinking about either what we had from supportive adults in our lives or what we wished we had from supportive adults in our lives, it wouldn't have been being reminded of everything we don't know, right? It would have been a sense of, like, having some confidence, like, oh my gosh, that sounds like a really challenging situation. I know you're a really good problem solver. Let me know if you want to consult about it, right? And it just conveys, like, I'm here for you. And I know you've got what it takes to get through this. And sometimes over communicating that confidence helps them stretch into some of those skills that we want them to have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is so key, that our communication isn't saying you don't know how to do anything, or, you're unable to do it, because they really take that to heart. And so we can't kind of play both sides, where we're saying you can handle this, you can do it, but then constantly be reminding them of how they cannot and how they're not capable of it. The other thing that I see, Michelle, is the constant correcting of kids, and it kind of nagging sometimes, but sometimes it's very subtle. Like, we'll be in a session and a mom will say, don't do that. Like, if the daughter's like picking at her nails or something, or sit up straight, or they'll be telling their explanation of stuff and they'll stop them in the middle. No, it wasn't like that. So it's the constant kind of correction. One of the things that I see that it comes from is a lot of parents, I mean, our kids are extensions of ourselves in some ways, right? So that we see, like, if our kid is doing something that is not appropriate or not socially great, let's say they're picking their nose or something, right? It's like we get embarrassed that somehow we as a parent are not doing our job well enough. And that can create those moments of losing our calm as well.
Yeah. I definitely have had the experience back, when being in restaurants was a thing, of like being at a table next to parents with younger kids, and the kids were just being kids, and it was not particularly bothersome to me, but the parents were constantly like shushing them and correcting them. And it was the parents' behavior that was more annoying, because they were trying to keep their kids in line. And it was kind of like, you know what, your kids are being kids and it's okay, but my gosh, can you be quiet?
Right.
And so I think just being mindful of, like, to what extent are we doing that? Because again, it comes from a really good place, right? Like, we want our kids to be decent human beings, and nitpicking or reminding them all the time of the ways in which they're not being who or what we want them to be generally isn't the way that they get there.
Right. And one thing that I really want parents to take away from tonight is not like to like get that inner critic going, like I'm a horrible parent, I'm not good enough. That's totally not what this is about. It's bringing awareness to certain patterns and things that we can shift, but we have to be aware of them to make that shift. And it's sometimes it can take you a day, like literally, like even just, oh, I hadn't thought of that. Sometimes it can take a week, a month, a few weeks. Because it is a pattern. But you can try it for a while, make a mistake, and then try it again. It's not an all or nothing.
Yeah. And definitely when we're trying to shift away from habits that we see as being less productive and trying to move into more productive patterns, it's much more helpful to focus on what we want to build more of than what we want to do less of, right? We want to squeeze out those bad habits with some better habits. And so I know, Sherry, tell me if you feel like we're up to talking about this now, but we had a really neat graphic that shared some information about tips for better communication.
Yeah.
And so
I'm going to put that up, Michelle.
yeah.
And what we can, let's talk about how do we bring that positive shift, which is what we're going to talk about. One of the things that I am hearing from so many parents is they're just like frustrated because their connection with their kid right now is just so bad. Like they don't talk to them much. All their communication is very negative. So if you're feeling like that's where you are right now in your home, this is a really good list that Michelle has put together for us on some ways to make a positive shift. Even if you're finding yourself kind of in a difficult spot, this is how you can make some of those changes.
I'm just going to add one more thing before I talk about some of the items on this list, is that I always think it's worthwhile to just start with warming up the relationship. And I know that when you are tearing your hair out and so frustrated with the kind of communication that you're having, that warming up the relationship feels like almost impossible and like the last thing you want to do, but it provides that foundation for being able to get things to a different place. So, whether it's going to Starbucks and getting your kid their favorite drink or finding a time to go for a walk together, like whatever you can do to just start to warm things up is often really, really helpful. And I get that it can be very challenging to do.
One of the things I recommend when parents are having just a really difficult time and they've tried a lot of stuff to engage their kids again is to take a Post-it note, a stack of Post-it notes, and every day just write a little love note to your kid and stick it somewhere where they're going to see it, with no need for them to acknowledge it, and no need to ask them, did you find it? Just little things saying, I love you, your smile is so amazing, you're such a great violin player, whatever, just something that's connecting with them, letting them know I'm thinking about you and I care about you.
Yeah. And sometimes people like aren't, that feels like a leap also. And so like, if that feels challenging, that's probably a hint that it's probably a really helpful thing to do. And if you're not quite ready to hand those Post-it notes or leave those Post-it notes somewhere that your child will find it, just spend a few days jotting down something you saw in them that you appreciate, right? Like I heard them laughing on a Zoom call with friends today, and I loved hearing the sound of their laughter. Or, they put a dish in the sink after they ate, and that was really exciting, like whatever it might be. But sometimes just looking for those positives helps remind you that there are actually positives when it may not really feel like there are many.
Right. And I know some people will actually pull out the baby albums when they like loved you and just wanted to be with you, wanted your attention, pull out the 2-year-old picture and just remind yourself, this is the same child.
Yes. Yes. And they will not be in whatever phase they're in forever, right? Like things, they're not like those 2-year-old pictures anymore, and they're not going to be like this forever either. But I get that we're spending a lot of time together. Would it be helpful to talk about any of the specifics around some of the things on this slide, Sherry?
I think we should. Let's go through them.
Great. So very often, I think as parents, we, really feel like we want to share the benefit of our experience with our kids, and we want to tell them what we know, which totally makes sense. And it means that we get into teaching or explaining or lecturing pretty quickly. And so I think one of the practices that parents can aim for is to just start to try to listen for understanding, right? So getting a sense of your child's experience and stepping back from the notion of like, do I agree or disagree with them? Do I think what they're saying is right or wrong? And so things like asking for more information or checking that you've heard what they're saying. So you can say like, can you give me an example of times when that has happened? Or, help me understand, are you saying that XYZ? So just trying to be like really neutral and hearing what it is they're saying and not necessarily letting your brain engage with the notion of, do I agree with them or not?
Yeah, and if we're not looking for like they're saying something wrong or I disagree, then you can really listen instead of be listening to what am I going to say or what are they doing wrong? How can I, convey my values? How can I correct them? Then you can really just listen.
Yeah, definitely. And I think this next one really kind of dovetails with that well, just expressing genuine curiosity. So finding out more about the situation, whether it's something they've experienced or something that's going on, and just like, asking again, kind of neutral questions like, oh, what was happening before your friend said that? Or what was that like for you? Or what did the teacher say next? Right. So just kind of gathering some fact, some information. I mean, you can, if your genuine curiosity also takes you to like, what did it feel like to hear your friend say that? Or what was it like while you were waiting for that text? You can definitely get into that, but just getting really curious. It's super helpful to take a step back from any heightened emotions at this time, right? So it's not like, oh my God, how did you handle that? Right? Like that's not helpful, genuine curiosity. It's like, just kind of a more neutral and calmer genuine curiosity.
And along those lines, if it's girl drama, which I talk a lot about it in Teen Wise, is like don't join in the fray. So don't start bad mouthing other kids and saying how life isn't fair. It just really doesn't empower them. And it can also kind of shut them down too.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm guessing not all of us have been through law school. I certainly haven't, but Socratic questioning is something that lawyers seem to know well. And this is really about asking questions that help the other person think through the situation. So things like, if your kid tells you about an email they want to send to their teacher and it sounds vaguely inappropriate to you, you could just say like, what would the benefits be of sending your teacher that email, and have them think through like what good could come from that, and like what might be the drawbacks of doing that, and see if they have any ideas. And at times you could say, I have some other thoughts if you're interested in hearing them, but it sounds like you've got a good list, and just let them think it through. I find that moving into Socratic questioning is super helpful at moments where you feel like diving into a lecture, right? So instead of telling them everything that you want them to know, start asking questions that might help them come to more thoughtful conclusions.
Right. And this is a time where it's really important to be in tune with your kids because they may not be ready for that Socratic question in that moment, but you can always come back to it. And what you said is opening the door for that. If you need me to go through this, I'm here for you. But you're not just automatically assuming they're in the right headspace for it.
Yeah, definitely. You need to be in a rational place for that one.
Right.
Yeah. Challenging unhelpful thoughts is something we've talked about a lot during these parent chats, but we all just have habits of mind where we tend to look at the worst of things. And so, just saying like, oh, your friend didn't text you back, like, and you're feeling like they're probably really mad at you. Are there any other possible explanations? Have there been times that you didn't get back to a friend as quickly as they might have wanted you to? What was going on then, right? So just, again, kind of helping them explore some of those things. The next couple of ones are kind of speak to the point, Sherry, of what you were saying a few moments ago, that like if our kids are not quite in their rational mind and are kind of more intensely in the feelings, and just tuning into those feelings, right? Like feelings, as uncomfortable and challenging to deal with both for our children and for ourselves as their parents can be, feelings are never right or wrong, right? They just are what they are. We absolutely can place limits on actions, but feelings come unbidden and we need to make space for them. So, just reflecting them. It sounds like you were really mad when your teacher said that, or it sounds like that felt really unfair. And so just really reflecting what you're hearing from them. And then that next one, just empathy, 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 right? You don't have to agree with your child in order to empathize with them, right? It sounds like you felt so embarrassed not to have your work ready for class today. I hate when I don't get things done on time. It feels awful, right? Instead of saying like, see what happens when you don't have your homework done, right? Because then it just becomes like, wow, mom's really nasty when I don't do my work.
Yeah.
Right. But just like, that just feels awful. I know I hate when I do that. And it's not like, oh, I'm so much better than you are. I've lived so much longer. I never procrastinate on anything, right? Like, no, I procrastinate too. And it feels yucky when you don't, have what you need. So I think that can go a long way.
This next one, I'm very interested to see what you have to say.
In terms of setting limits?
Yes.
Yeah, right. So just like I was saying a minute ago, feelings, obviously, we can't put limits on, but behaviors we can. But we can't necessarily control what other people do. And so focusing on what you will or won't do is really helpful. I saw a great quotation from one of the authors of the book, How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and How to Listen So Kids Will Talk, where she said something to her daughter like, when you speak to me like that, it makes me so angry that I find it impossible to be helpful. I will be able to hear you when you rephrase that. Right. That. And so it's not saying, you better say that differently, or don't talk disrespectfully to me, but just like, I can't actually hear you when you're speaking that way. If you want me to be able to hear what you're saying, I'm going to need you to rephrase that. Mm-hmm. And I just think like being clear about what you will and won't do is it gets us pretty far, because we cannot make other people do what we want them to, hard as we try.
And I think also under like setting your limits is if you've had enough of the conversation, that you do have the right to say, I can't have this conversation anymore. I'm going to go in the other room, or I'm going to take a walk or something, because there are times when it gets heated when some of you have kids who are the ones who keep coming back for more, like they won't let it go, even though you've said this is the end of the conversation. So you just have to set that limit and take care of yourself so you can stay calm.
Absolutely. And I think inviting kids to know that that's an option they have too, right? Mm-hmm. We want them to use that not only with us, but potentially with their siblings or with friends, or maybe someday in their lives with partners, to just say like, you know what, I can't handle this conversation right now. I need to take a break.
Mm-hmm. Right. Which is very different than just walking out, right? To say it verbally, I'm taking a break because of this. It has a very different feel. If you've ever had someone walk out on you when you're having a conversation, it's very hurtful. So by verbalizing why you're leaving, it makes a little more sense.
For sure. Definitely. Yes. So are we close to our...
All right. So I know everyone shared in their breakout rooms, but if you can put in the chat box, like what you're committing to, that would be great. We can hold each other accountable for that. Let me see. What did I choose? The first one, the listening. Sorry, my screen's going to bounce around a bit while I type this in. And also, just so everyone knows, that big ugly link right there, that's the link so you can actually download the handout with all of these ways to create positive communication. So we have listening, listen for understanding, challenging unhelpful thoughts, setting your own limits. I like setting your own limits. And also somebody said, thinking about what your own limits are. That's important because you can't really set them unless you stop and think, how much can you handle, right? For those of you who just joined, we are, one second. We are just sharing in the chat box what we decided we'd work on. So Val says she can't see the link. Can anybody else see the link there? Okay, I see it. It reset itself. Okay, let me put it up again. Okay, can you see now? Excellent. Okay, I hope it works. Val, if you can click on it and see if it works, that would be great. And we'll also be putting it in our Facebook group. If you're not already part of that, hop on over there and we'll put it there too. Okay, awesome. Val, I think that's a thumbs up. It's working. Great. Okay, we are missing Michelle. So Michelle must be in her group still. So we will wait a moment and let Michelle join us in. And look at that, we're doing good on time. We have 6 whole minutes left. Awesome. All right, so while we're waiting, Vanessa says, challenging unhelpful thoughts and setting limits. Everyone is so needy at the moment, and I don't need anyone at the same level. Vanessa, what does that mean exactly, that last piece? That you don't need anyone at the same level? I'm curious. I need a break. Yes, that sums it up. I need a break. Oh my gosh, yes. I saw a friend very briefly. She is going through cancer treatment right now. And so I was taking her some meals and, you know, we kept our distance and everything, but it was so wonderful to just see somebody face to face and have that connection and feel like kind of normal, even though we had masks on. Yeah, we all need a break from our day to day. And the thing to keep in mind is our kids are feeling that probably 10 times how we're feeling it, just because their amygdala is really big and, you know, like creating all these big emotions. So, and, you know, the time that they are out of their social scene is just seems so much bigger to them because a year of their life is much longer percentage wise than in our lives. So we have to keep that in mind too. So when you're losing your calm, one of the things I like to think about is what are they going through and to see it from their point of view. And also to think about your own teenage self, how you felt in those moments. Sometimes that can really flip you back to calm, like, oh my gosh, this is just what she needs or what he needs right now, just for me to listen and be there, not to lecture and lose my calm and scream and yell and all that stuff and nag. So, okay, Bonnie says, okay, so Michelle might have gotten dropped. We will see if Michelle jumps back in. But what I'll do meanwhile is kind of wrap things up. And if she pops back in, that's a bonus. So, you know, we have a lot of good things to think about as parents that we really do need to find a way to keep our calm. We also need to give ourselves grace when we do kind of mess up. We go back to our kids and show them what it looks like to like mend a relationship when it's kind of had a bad moment. That in and of itself is so powerful because you are role modeling that. So if you have a big, you know, blowout, so to speak, the thing not to do, don't ignore each other, don't just avoid it, don't just act like nothing happened. Actually have a moment where you are reconciling and apologizing if that's appropriate, and connecting, because even the difficult times can be a point of connection for all of us as a family, to know like we're in this together. Even if we get mad at each other, there's unconditional love there, and that's really what our kids need overall. Okay, so I believe this is it for tonight, and I hope to see everyone in a couple of weeks. I keep getting my dates messed up. I think this year just has me all out of sorts, but it's in 2 weeks, whatever that is. And we'll be talking about creating space for joy. And I hope to see you there. And also make sure you jump in our Facebook group so that we can continue the conversation over there. Everyone, I hope that, oh, Michelle's coming back. So we're gonna wait just 1 second while Michelle jumps back in. Let's see. It looks like she's in the waiting room. So let's let her in so she can say bye as well. 1 second while she's joining. Come on, Michelle. At least technology worked for most of the evening, right? You never know. Yes. It says that she's joining, but it's not. So let me try. There's 2 of her in there. Maybe if I say yes to both of those, one of them will come through. Okay, so anything else that we need to add, Bonnie, before we leave for the night?
I don't think so. It's just really grateful to everybody for being here and taking time out, and hope that this was valuable. Val, did you want to do a poll?
I did, and I also just noted that there's a question. Is there a good, easy to read book? For example, kids' book about communication.
Oh, there's a lot of good ones. The one that Val brought up is a great one, How to Talk to Your Kids So They'll Listen, or I think it's a longer title than that. But what we can do is we can actually compile a list and put that in Facebook so that we kind of have a lot of good ones. There's so many great ones out there. So let us put that in the Facebook group so we get some good answers for that. That is a great question. Okay, so it looks like for some reason Michelle can't get back in, which is very sad. Michelle, thank you. And also, I'd love for you to do the poll, but one other thing that I'd love as you're, exiting and going about your night is to, in the chat box, put one takeaway that you got from tonight so that we can kind of, learn from you what is coming across and what you're appreciating. It's just really great to see the takeaways from the night. So everybody have a fantastic evening, and we will see you again soon.